Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining this week for this episode of Demystifying Money. I'm excited today to talk to Jenny Belanger. She's a website designer, brand strategist, and the founder of Jenny B Designs. I heard her speak at one of my networking groups, and I was really interested in what she had to say about website design and how it can help businesses reach their ideal clients and all of the things that, are really, really important that sometimes maybe we either focus on too much and never get started in business, or maybe it's something that we thought about when we first started our business and then things have been moving along and we haven't revisited it since. So I think it's a great idea to talk about really websites today, what they can do, how important they are for businesses, and how she helps people. So she has a background in nonprofit marketing and a passion for empowering women-led businesses. And she also hosts the podcast Website Design Made Simple, which shows design tips and helps business owners confidently show up online. Jenny, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Misty. I'm excited to chat.
This episode of Demystifying Money with Misty Lynch is proudly sponsored by Soundview Financial Advisors. Visit www.soundviewfinancialadvisors.com to learn more.
So I talked a little bit about your background with the nonprofit marketing, but can you tell me how you went from that to launching Jenny B Designs while you were expecting your first child?
Good question. Well, I do come out from the nonprofit world, and if anyone is in that world, they know you have to wear so many hats at the same time. You're doing lots of different things. And one of the things that I was doing was building the website for the nonprofit that I was working at. And I loved it. This was back in the early 2000s, so a while ago, and I was figuring out how to design and then really figuring out how people use the internet because it was so new, and what do we need to share as the organization, and what do we want the person to do when they visit the website. It was a passion of mine, and once I designed the nonprofits website, other nonprofits asked me if I could help with theirs. And so it slowly became a side business for quite a while. And when my son was born, I decided that I wanted to focus full time on the design. It was my passion, and I wanted to have my own business, work my own hours, be with my kids. And that's when I fully stepped into the full-time role of Jenny B Designs. And it's where I've been ever since, serving nonprofits, but then mostly since the pandemic, a lot of online women-based businesses and then local businesses as well.
During the pandemic, how important was the website? I know business wasn't being done the exact same way. We were all home, we were all online. What happened to businesses that had a fantastic website versus the ones that maybe were scrambling?
Well, that was such a great time for us web designers, and I think a great time to be online.
Mhm.
People started to realize we need a website that actually works for me. And what I mean by that is that it makes money for you. It encourages the action you want someone to take to book a consultation call or to buy the product. And those businesses who realized that and either created a new website or rebuilt their existing website to better serve the audience that they wanted to attract really up-leveled them. And I think they had such a more powerful impact during that time than those who didn't actually make changes to their websites.
Yeah, no, it's interesting, obviously how business changes, but I do think, when I first joined Soundview, we had a website, but it hadn't been looked at in a number of years. And in my mind, I saw the website as being like my employee that was always working. So, and you talked about that being a money-making, employee 24/7. How does that mindset kind of map into a business owner's relationship when it comes to marketing their own assets?
You actually hit something on the head. A lot of businesses and legacy businesses, by that I mean someone who's been around for a long time, they sometimes build that website and then leave it alone, and they're just continuing about their business. They're getting referrals and just trucking along. But the thing is that your website needs to change as your business shifts, and businesses evolve. And it's important to look at your website and make sure that you're speaking to the ideal clients that you want to work with at that certain point in time, and that you have imagery that reflects who you are as a business, and that it's set up to encourage people to take that action.
Mhm.
And so it's an important asset for your business. In my opinion, I think it's the number one asset for your business because it is. It's working around the clock for you 24/7 to encourage that action and to book those consultation calls or to have someone reach out to you and book business.
Yeah, and a lot of the businesses that you help, I know you mentioned like nonprofits. I know there's people who are starting their own business. We might be selling something that our ideal client might not know who to go for it. And they might go straight to the internet or straight to a search. So I think in that respect, the website is super important because maybe it's not the traditional, I'll ask mom and dad, who is your doctor? Who is your this? They might be looking for a business coach or a financial advisor for the first time, or all these other types of businesses that maybe the first place we're going to check is typically going to be searching it up on our phones. And so I do think, what are some of what are some of the things that you've seen on websites that you've maybe taken over or redone that give that impression that this is outdated or this isn't really somewhere? What are some of the off-putting things that you've seen that some people might want to take a look at their website and see if they notice?
The first one is probably not having an up-to-date brand, a visual brand that represents you. And by brand, I mean your logo, your colors, your fonts. Perhaps you have a logo that you created a number of years ago that, is this square logo with the white background. I probably can picture what I'm thinking about, but logos need to evolve. And from that visual branding, then comes your website design. Everything flows from that brand. And you can tell pretty quickly when you land on a website if it's older. There
Mhm.
aren't full with pictures. Maybe the messaging, the copy on the website was written a long time ago. It doesn't really align with the visitor who's visiting your website today. Maybe the photos are older and you haven't refreshed them in a while.
Mhm.
And the user experience, it's not clean and smooth and quick. And I think that's a big change from a few years ago to now. People need to get what they need answers to immediately, like very quickly. And when they land on your website, if they don't know that they're in the right place, that you can help them, they're going to leave. So I always say your most important part of your website is that hero section when they
Mhm.
first land. 3 seconds or less, you need to make sure the person understands that they're in the right place and that you can solve the problem that they have immediately.
I was just interviewing someone yesterday, Lasada Pippin. If you haven't listened to that, he's a business coach, and he talked about the importance of being clear and concise and compelling. Like, and that with confident. I think that that is so true with what you just said about the website, because if it's not clear, and you mentioned 3 seconds, if it's not concise, people leave. We don't have a ton of time or opportunity. They're going to scroll to the next thing, and that's just kind of the world that we're in right now. How do you help your clients with that clarity piece? If they're like, I do all the things and this is important, I think this is important to me. How do you help them get that clarity? That's super important to build trust with your audience.
As part of the strategy process, we talk about your overall business goals, but also identify who is your ideal client. Or actually, I listened to your interview with Beth, and
Hmm.
she said your bullseye client, which
Yeah.
was really cool. I like that. But you need to have that person in mind. And then when you're thinking about the copy on your website, you're speaking to that exact person. And that's how you can make sure that you're not using too much jargon and that it is clear. I always say clear over clever. It's
Mm-hmm.
clear and that someone knows that they're being called in because they read your words and it represents what they have in mind.
Yeah, no, I like that point that she said about the bullseye client, because I get a lot of people that are like, but I want to help everybody. I can help everybody. It doesn't mean you don't help other people on the board. It's just, and I think we've all done this when we've gone to a business and we feel like, yes, this is exactly who I need. This is who I want to talk to. Or ones where we say, nope, that's not for me. It's nice to almost be able to have people opt in or out if they're really not a good fit. And I think the website can do that so much easier than being on the phone with somebody and discovering that. So what are some of the ways that you make people connect quickly? You mentioned the hero section. Like, what are some of the ways that you can kind of visually bring that that quick decision-making process by knowing kind of what the client's goals are.
That hero section, making sure that there's a picture when someone lands on your website that shows the results that you're going to give them. I tend to use the example of a dentist's office. You don't want to have a picture of someone sitting in the dentist chair for the
No.
dentist website. You want someone smiling, running in a field with like straight white teeth.
Yeah.
That's the transformation that you're bringing. And keeping that in mind in your visuals, ensuring that your visuals match your brand colors. Everything is very similar, and that it's personable.
Mm-hmm.
Pictures of you, of your team, of your space if you have a physical location. And then weaving in the words that is speaking to that ideal client in a way that's guiding them through their website journey. You might start on the home page and then you would be leading them to the services page and then ensuring that you are leading them to that contact page or to that phone number that you want them to call, whatever that action is you want them to do. Ensuring that everything flows in a way that it's just visually and educationally easy for someone to understand what you want them to do on that website.
I think that's super important about, the team and the space and kind of weaving that in. I think that we do kind of we do kind of make these decisions really quickly, but I feel like sometimes people, I know this has happened with like the firm that I was at before I was here. And I love the guys that ran it, but they changed the whole branding to like black and white with like a mountain lion in the hero section. And it was like, but their goal, they liked working with like CrossFit athletes, probably like, more, I mean, and they were two men who were in their, early 40s. So I feel like that was really their target. And so I was like, I don't want to send my people here because it wasn't me. And I was thinking about that. And that was one of the things that I thought about when I left was like, they don't need to change. Like, this is what this is working because it would probably take some of the women I work with or some of the couples, and they might be like, no, it's too alpha, a little too aggressive. Like, I might not have enough money for this. Like, and so it was just interesting how that was like, to me, it just made sense. I couldn't really explain like why. It just was like a feeling when you look
Yeah.
at something. So I think that's so, and it's kind of a cool thing to work on, but I will say that it's hard to figure out if it's perfect or right. So what do you say to business owners who are constantly trying to rebrand, redo all the design stuff because that feels like progress? When maybe they're not making sales or they're not like the business isn't and they think that that's the trick. Like, is there too much that you can do when you're trying to figure out, this piece of your business?
I think there's absolutely too much you can do. If you are putting effort into a redesign project and you start with your visual branding, you put a lot of thought into that, and then you translate it into the website, that's just step one. You're creating a space that you are wanting to share with your ideal client to attract them and then repel the ones that you don't want to work with. It works both ways. But then after that, I see a lot of times where people will, play with their pictures or move some words around or shift some things here and there. And I think that that is a little bit too much emphasis on your website. Perhaps putting a little bit more emphasis on maybe adding some blog posts or some content to your website.
Okay.
In doing so, you are increasing your authority, you're sharing it with the world, but you're also telling Google, this is what I like to talk about, this is my expertise, and therefore you can be found more easily on Google.
Yeah.
And then getting people to get to your website. I love meeting people in person and sending them to my website. I find that that's a large piece of the puzzle and networking with people and sharing out your site. Once you build it, they don't immediately come. It's a
True.
work in progress. So
Hmm.
you always need to get out there, share the word, and send people back to your website whenever possible. And that's another way to gain traction with the search engines, getting that traffic over there.
Right, because that piece is important too. And so once the website is built, how important is that ranking or making sure that things are still going to it? I know some people maybe pay to rank higher, but what are some ways if you have like a more limited budget that you can make sure that the website is fresh and that people are seeing it?
Like I mentioned, writing
Mm.
content, blog posts, it still matters. That's a big piece of the puzzle. If you have a podcast like you do, I know you put your episodes on your website. That's another form of content. Or just having some regular content scheduling,
Yeah.
as well as thinking about your Google business profile. And I find this goes adjacent with your website.
Okay.
That is another avenue that you can update, add posts to, add content to, and it just pings Google because you have your URL over on the Google business profile that matches your website. This is my website, this is what I like to talk about, and that's another way to help increase your search engine rankings when you actually focus on that Google business profile.
Okay. Yeah, because I think that we all are familiar with these terms, but sometimes it might be a where do we start? What's the most important thing to focus on? And so I think that that's true though about content creation. Like if you are making things or if you have things you can share on the website, I think that's constantly kind of going to keep things fresh. Maybe you get new eyes on it, which is really, really important for people as we're growing our businesses. And so I wanted to ask you another question though. What is important when you're working with somebody when it comes to choosing a web designer? I know I've talked to some people that think that you are just going to create it, know their business, figure it out, and they don't want to. This was something that Beth mentioned too. Like there's a lot of intake, there's a lot of things that you have to do in order to get the process. So, what should people expect when they're either trying to choose a web designer or like what that process will look like once you find somebody whose work you really like?
The process, I think, varies greatly depending on who you work with. I know a lot of fantastic web designers, and we all chat about how
Mhm.
we work with our clients, and we're all very different. I think at the end of the day, it's you need to find someone who you get along with, who you like their style. So going to their website and seeing some of their work, and that you can envision yourself being in a collaborative relationship with, because it is a collaborative process. For my clients, we do a strategy call, that deep dive into understanding how your business works, how you make money,
Mhm.
and then aligning everything on top of that. And I have a very quick turnaround for my projects. Typically, it takes me 4 weeks to design a
Okay.
website from start to finish. And I like to simplify the process as much as possible. So I don't have added things here and there. I just streamline it, make it as easy as possible. But I tend to take everything that I hear from the client and we talk about their visual brand and they collect some content for me and then I design it based on that feeling and the strategy behind their business. And that's how I tend to work with clients. But I
Yeah.
know that there are other web designers who do it other ways. And I think it's just finding someone whose process you align with and whose personality and relationship that you can make it work for them.
Yeah, because I think like if you have to obviously, like you said, the collaboration piece, because I think that some people might have hired a web designer and then kind of turned over the reins and gotten back a product that they didn't really like or they didn't feel like it worked for them. So I think that part is so important to work with somebody and understand how the process is going to look and what your input has to be because it's really hard for, I'm sure, for someone like you to understand exactly what this person wants to achieve without knowing them very well. And so that part is super important. But 4 weeks, I feel like that could be quite a quick turnaround for a lot of businesses who might think that this process takes 6 months or it's going to cost too much money or it's going to be too much work. I think that that's, important to kind of understand how a web designer works, what their process is, what their fees are, and just, when you're making those decisions, because it is difficult for some of us to build. I know you can build a website on your own, and you might have been really good at this when you're in your nonprofit role in order to like take it, but for some of us, it's a little bit complicated. So, what are you mentioned some of the most important pages, but like, what are some of the things like, what are the moving parts that go behind the scenes in a website? If you have an old website with a ton of content, like what kind of work goes into like refreshing something like that? Um, Maybe if you've been in business for a while, but you haven't really fixed anything that's been broken.
Sure. And yeah, you said it. You can create your own website, but
Mm,
understanding the strategy behind
yeah.
the website, I think, is the most important piece. For business owners who have a website that they've built, maybe they've had it for a while, I tend to see a lot of times the navigation has
Mm,
gone a little bit too big. One of the things I like to see is a simple, clean navigation, typically with 5 items or less for service providers. I love a about page because that actually is one of your highly visited pages on your website. A services tab. If you have a blog or a podcast, that would be a tab. If you have both, think about bucketing that under resources using that drop down. And then a contact page, finally with the button in the upper right-hand corner of that action that you want people to do. And a lot of websites sometimes are missing this button. What do you want someone to do
Yeah.
when they come to your website? Book a call, buy that product. Make sure there's a button in the upper right-hand corner. That's something that I see a lot of websites kind of let get out of hand just because we
Mhm.
want to share all the things. Like we got this new program, we put it up in the navigation, it just starts growing across. So thinking about how to streamline that so that you're driving people to take that action you want them to take.
I think, what about like when you want a call to action? I remember I used to go to, and I don't know if I've seen this as much anymore, where like things would pop up, or every time you would get to something, it would pop up. Is that something that's still, you know, useful, or is that helpful, or is that something that deters people now that are on a website from, continuing to stay on that page?
Pop-ups are annoying, but they work.
They
I will
work.
tell you,
Okay.
they work. I don't typically use pop-ups on my website. I tell my clients if they have something that's time sensitive or if they are a product-based business and they have like that 15%
Oh,
discount code,
discount. Yeah.
that's a really good use. They work. I
Hmm.
guess I'll leave it at that and I let the client make the decision if they want to give it a try or not. I
Yeah.
tend to usually like click out of them when I see them. I don't leave the website, but I click out of them.
Yeah.
But again, a lot of people don't and they put their email in. So
Yeah.
you have to think about what works for you.
That's true, because I feel like you're right on some of the stores where it's like spin this wheel and get your discount or do this, but then it's like, okay, give me your email. Now give me your phone number to text you. And you're just like,
Yeah.
sometimes you stay or not. But I guess it definitely depends on the kind of business you're in. If it's a service business, it might not be, unless, like you said, you have an event or something where people want to register right away. But good
Right.
to know, because I wasn't sure if those were still effective anymore, or if it was good to have like book a consult all over your website, or if it's really strategic, which might be something that a web designer would be helpful with.
Yeah, you want to have those calls to action at least
Hmm.
every other section of your website, and they don't have to be all the same. Just guiding people to take that next step, whatever it is, through your website.
Are there any examples of, clients you've worked with whose either their confidence or maybe their results have, kind of climbed after going through this process?
Yes, I got the nicest email yesterday from a client who I worked with a few months ago, and she just reached out and said, I'm just loving my brand and my website. It makes me happy every day. Thank you." She was a psychiatrist and
Hmm.
she had a therapy website. I think that there's some therapy software that give you a website that you can
Hmm.
build yourself, but it didn't reflect her brand. And together we designed a new logo, came up with some beautiful colors and fonts that matched
Hmm.
who she was and who she wanted to work with. And she had a photo shoot. She got some new pictures done. And we created a beautiful website that truly speaks to her ideal client and calls them in. And her confidence has like, gone through the roof. She's attracted more clients that she wants to work with versus those clients who
Hmm.
just got referred to her. And so she's a great example
Yeah.
of one of those results that you get. It increases your confidence and you
Hmm.
want to tell people about your website and share it out. And there's no disconnect
Hmm.
between meeting someone in person and having a warm personality, and then you go to their website and it's like sterile and old. Now everything is the same and has that continuity to it.
And you mentioned the confidence, and I feel like that's something that, business owners, like as they get to work in their business, it can be nice to have that confidence boost or kind of a refresh every once in a while. Um, do you work with a lot of different professionals, like photographers and things like that, videographers on these more personal parts of the website that I feel like sometimes, like I know when I bought my house, 10 years ago, the picture of the real estate agent who was selling it on the poster was very different than the man that showed up. So it felt a little strange, but how important is it to kind of invest in those things in your business? And how frequently do you think that people should think about updating their pictures?
It makes all the difference in the world. Christy is a prime example who I just worked
Hmm.
with. I just worked with the family legal services, and they had photos done.
Hmm.
And it just brings everything to the next level because you're seeing photos of yourself. And when I say photos done, I don't mean standing against the wall with like your arms crossed wearing a suit. I mean out talking to people or walking down the road or sitting at a desk, just very casual, beautiful personality pack photos. And your visitors will feel that when they come to the website. They will just feel that openness, that lightness, and they will relate and make that emotional connection. And so I believe that having branded photos of you, your team, your space is essential to a beautiful website that actually gets the job done.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it's important. I think that every time I've like refreshed pictures, I've always felt kind of excited about it, even though like I don't love getting my picture taken. Like I feel like once they're done and you kind of can refresh things on the website, it's almost like when new chapters start, new people join the firm, new things happen. It's a good way to kind of capture that and keep things going. What are
Yeah.
some of the mindset shifts on messaging and design, that you might have for a new client when it comes to like standing out
Mm.
in the crowd if they're really not either comfortable with it or not really sure how to do that if they maybe have never created a website or a brand before.
You do need to make yourself known and you need to bring out your personality now more than ever because everything is like AI written. And you can tell when you read words that were written by AI. And it's important to find your voice.
Hmm.
Maybe you haven't perfected it. Maybe you don't know exactly who you are speaking to, but you have a really good idea. And it's not just the everyday same old jargon. There is something about you that you can write that sounds like you. And same with the photos,
Yeah.
bringing that out in the imagery. It's important to make sure that your space online really reflects who you are so that, like I said, when you're offline, that it matches that personality and that person.
Yes, definitely. And I think I was speaking with somebody at a networking event, and I think she was like a foot reflexologist, but she didn't like any pictures of herself. She didn't want any pictures of her on like her website. And I'm like, I would want to see you
Yeah.
before I show up.
Yeah,
Like,
that's the
I don't
number
know,
one
like
thing.
I kind
Yeah,
of would want to see who you are. And like I think that it was just one of those things of being like, I don't want to, I don't like it. It's more about like this is the work and this is the tactical stuff. And I was like, I really feel like you should put some videos or pictures up of like your clean space or something that would help people like decide that this was good instead of just being like an informational website
yeah,
of
yeah.
like,
You
oh,
need
I learned
pictures of
stuff. Where do I want to go from here?
right. You need pictures of yourself, and I see that a lot in financial companies
Hmm.
or legal companies or maybe consulting groups, larger companies where you don't know who is behind this brand.
Yeah.
And so it's important to make sure that you're showing your face or your team's face or even just, something of the physical space that tells people this is who is behind the
Yeah.
business. It's very important.
Yeah, no, I've definitely seen some financial advice, like some where there's no visuals at all. And some, like I have a friend and she's very like, the like high-heeled shoes, like suits. She's just like, but that's like the energy that's her. And like some people are gonna like love that. And I love that she like puts that out there and then like but you're not gonna go there and expect someone to show up in like sweatpants or like laid back. Like you know exactly what you're gonna get. And so I think it's just important because it might not be perfect. It might not be like what you're seeing out there, but I feel like not everybody wants perfect. They probably just want, especially like you said with AI, like authentic, real.
Yeah.
How
Yeah.
much more of like, where do you think that that's going to be going next as far as, with all the filter and everything that we're seeing, the, ChatGPT, things being like copy, like, copy being, very easy to tell. How do you think it's going to make it harder for people to stand out or, maybe an opportunity?
I think it's definitely an opportunity. And we can tell when you're reading AI copy. I love AI. I think it's such a helpful tool. But then you need to refine it and make it sound more like you. And it's such a great opportunity to actually write content that is your own ideas, written in your own voice, and it will stand out. And I think Google is going to take notice as well. There's so much content that's just written by the AI bots.
Mhm.
And I think that Google is going to start understanding and like, encouraging people to go to the real content versus the AI generated content. So now is the chance to shine. And I
Yeah.
love fun personality pack content, especially written by a copywriter like
Mhm.
Beth or so many others that I work with. It makes all the difference.
Yeah, I think it definitely does make a difference. And you're right. I think it's a tool. I think it's helpful. It can help with like, things like even with the podcast, like podcast titles, ideas, like stuff like that, that I feel like could be, perfected, but it's not necessarily going to replace, really feeling like you can connect with somebody, which is probably going to be a little bit different than, what a computer might spit out if you said, create this copy to get people to go, buy my book or do that.
Right.
How has your podcast helped your firm grow?
The podcast has been great. I am not a blog writer. I
Mhm.
don't enjoy writing, and I wanted a way to share content, long form content with an audience. So I've turned to creating my podcast, and for the podcast, I do show notes that are in the form of blog posts. And it's been really fun sharing. It's mostly a solo show. So
Mhm.
typically my episodes are about 10 to 15 minutes long. I share easy ways that small businesses can up-level their websites with a few changes. And I've gotten a lot of feedback with people who like listen religiously and make all the
Yeah.
changes. I've also had clients come to me from the podcast. And what's cool is that they understand my philosophy. They understand everything that I'm saying. So when
Mhm.
we do have that strategy call, we're both like in sync and we make a beautiful product together. And it's been a great avenue to just meet new people and to be able to have a place that I can share out and send people to learn more to help them better their businesses.
I think that's great. And I feel like there is something about when people listen to you and they hear you. I feel like they do get to know you in a different way. And I agree. I couldn't stand writing a blog. I did it for an entire year and it was painful. And talking to people is so much more, it's so much easier. I think for me that yeah, writing the blog writing it felt like work.
Yeah.
Felt like
I
work for sure. Um, what if somebody is thinking, yes, this is something I need to do? What should people, estimate as like a range for a budget in order to work with somebody professionally who can help them with their web design?
I think it depends on if
Mhm.
you are doing a visual rebrand component. So if you're going to redo your logo, colors, and fonts, or if it's just a website, or if you're going to have a copywriter get involved as well. I do offer all three of those options. For just getting a website built, I would estimate between, about around 5,000,
Mhm.
4 to 5,000. And then it can go up to 8 if we're gonna include copy and logo. But that's working with someone like myself
Mhm.
who's focused on marketing and strategy. You can also get a website designed for much less and less expensive. But I think that it's just getting a website built for you. It's not one that's built in strategy and with marketing first in mind. So it
Yeah.
depends on what you want that final product to be.
No, I definitely think it's important. I think it's important for people to invest in something like this because if you're doing it to check a box, yes, you can do that just fine. But if you really want it to work, and I do feel like I barely go to a restaurant without looking at their website and looking at the menu anymore. Like it's just what we do. So I think that is one way to get people to kind of, maybe they hear about you or they learn about you somehow, and then the first thing they're probably going to do before they call you is look you up. And that's a great way to, I think, communicate who you are, what you do, how you can help people. And I think the investment is certainly worth it. And I think that most business owners who have a beautiful brand and a beautiful website would agree. So thank you so much, Jenny, for joining me today. How can people find you if they want to listen to your podcast or learn more? I'm guessing you have a beautiful website. If people are just curious to check it out, where should they head?
Sure. Well, we're on the podcast app. So if you want to hop over to my show, it's Website Design Made Simple. And then you can find me online, jennybdesigns.com. And I have all the resources and all the things there.
Thank you so much for joining. I think this is, I think, as we're thinking about business, as we get into, Q3, Q4, maybe this is something that you've had on your mind for a while, but I do think that it's a great investment sometimes to make in your business that can really help either reboost your confidence or help you relaunch something or create something brand new and share it with people. So thank you, Jenny, so much for joining me today. And thank you all so much for listening. If you're looking to learn more about working with me or listen to more episodes of the podcast like some that we mentioned today, please head over to mistylynch.com. I'd love for you to check that out. And I would look forward to talking to you all again next week. Thank you so much for joining. Don't forget to share with friends and family, and together let's demystify the world of money. Knowledge is the key to financial empowerment.